I freaking love my ego, and I encourage everyone to love this part of themselves because it's gonna be there anyway. So you might as well love it, right?
I mean, it's what makes you human. If you didn't have ego, you would be nothingness. You would have no human identity. I mean, it's part of the human experience.
Hey guys, welcome to our SoulFam Podcast, where I interview space holders from all over the world. I am your host. My name is Karolina, and I am the connection catalyst. I help spiritual entrepreneurs experience deeper connection with themselves, with others, and with the universe. Today on the show, we have Nicolette, a life coach, a female embodiment coach, and a relationship coach. So I'm super excited to talk to Nicolette today. Hello and welcome, Nicolette. How are you doing?
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. Hello, hello. So excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. I'm honored.
I am honored as well that you said yes to it because we need more and more podcasts like this with the value that we bring, especially about healing and coaching and all these methods to raise our consciousness, because this is what our planet needs right now more than ever in this pandemic time. So I am super grateful that you agreed to share your wisdom and your experience with healing, with how you helped yourself and others. And I'm super excited to talk more about what you're doing and what are your methods, and maybe also how did you even get to be the embodiment and the relationship coach, because there is a lot of different coaching modalities you can do. So why did you choose this specific niche?
Feminine embodiment. So I sort of kind of morphed into this through my own healing journey. When I started my journey about 3 years ago, I moved to Austin, Texas from Chicago. And I was sort of just living this life in autopilot. I felt like I was very disconnected from my body. I was rather disconnected from my emotions. I didn't even know what feminine embodiment meant. I didn't meditate, none of those things. And then I moved to Austin, Texas, and I stumbled upon a feminine embodiment coach. I was like, I don't know what that means, but I was looking at her Instagram, and her name is Rachel Rosito, a wonderful teacher, and she's just so embodied in what she teaches. And she just had this sense of inner peace and freedom, like liberation and sovereignty, that I was just very, very drawn to. And I saw the work that she was doing with my twin sister and how that was changing her life. And so I hired her, and I started my personal journey, my personal growth journey. Um, and as I learned through my own practices and experiences, and I started feeling the shifts in my own life and seeing it affect the people around me, that's where I was like, okay, this is like really, really important. This is really important stuff here, and nobody's talking about it. And so that's how I became an embodiment coach. I was like, we need to share the message. And yeah.
Amazing, amazing. I love that. And it's so good that other people inspire people, and then they're like, "Oh my god, this person is such an example of peace. Like what the hell did they do to reach this peace?" Right? And then we are digging and digging more. And I'm intending for this podcast to also be like that, to be like, "Oh, these people are so happy, are so excited to talk about life and about healing. Let's check it out." So I really hope that this intention will be fulfilled. And so what do you do with embodiment? Like, what are your techniques to get into your body and to feel as a woman, right? To feel deeply as you possibly can.
Yes, I love that you led with that, with feminine embodiment and feeling it as deeply as you can, because I'll just start by explaining what feminine embodiment really is for people who haven't heard that term. And feminine embodiment is being deeply connected to your emotions, right? The feminine essence is she's deeply connected to her emotions. She has navigated the landscapes of her heart deeply because she's taken the time to do so. She is practice, using practices that get her in touch with her body, and she's because of this she is in flow. She's receptive, right? The feminine is open and receptive, and she's in the body, and so. And there are a lot of different ways to do this, right? And this is it's a cultivation, right? Because so many of us are not conditioned to to even know what this is, to practice these things, because it is a practice, it's a cultivation. And it's a moment to moment, day by day. And once you get the tools to learn how to do that, then you get to actually embody it. And that's like the feminine. But we're in this culture that uh, sort of glorifies the masculinity, right? And sometimes it's the shadow masculine, right, where it's like go go go, never taking rest, grind, um, and pushing the feelings to the side and just getting shit done. And that's the culture that we live in, and especially in Western culture. And so I think that it's just really important that more women hear this message and know that it's okay, because we have this like little feminine being inside, this essence that just wants to flow through, and so often we're just like we don't feel safe enough to do that. So it is a cultivation and it is a practice.
Hmm. Beautiful. And so, what are your favorite practices for women to get in touch with these feminine qualities inside?
Yeah, so there's so many answers to that. There are so many tools and so many ways, and I'll just start with what how I started on that journey. And that was really through just finding stillness. As simple as that sounds, but it's so profound. Finding stillness, meditation. It was the first thing that I started to do, was like meditation. And when I quieted the mind for the first time, I started to, that's where all, it was like unlocking it through my breath, unlocking all of these emotions, and just being able to, the mud just clears from the water and you're able to see yourself more clearly. And then you get to discover all these
Hmm.
different parts. And so mine started with a daily meditation practice, and really just inviting more beauty into my life, more sacredness, right? And sacred means special. It means that you see things with more reverence, right? So seeing yourself with more reverence, and through ritual, right? Through like connection to spirit. I grew up in a household that was like, like there is no God, there is nothing there, it was just very anti-religion. And now it's interesting because my idea of that has changed so much. I see connection to spirit as source. It's all of life force around us, and building that connection to spirit, to which is really to yourself, right? Because we are all reflections of God, right? And whatever God means to you, right? The source, life source. And so really just, yeah, creating a really juicy morning ritual where I meditate and I get to drop in and create this sacred space, right? And I when I in my teachings, in my programs, and my one-on-one coaching, that's the first thing that I talk about and that I really encourage, is to build this sacred space, an altar space, to really create that safety and that beauty, to really drop in and do these practices, right? And so, and there are a lot of different tools to use for to feel embodied in your feminine. And um, so, for me, one of the most profound uh, realizations that I've had is that the connection to our wombs is is the deepest connection to the feminine essence. That's like our powerhouse. There's so much power that we hold in our wombs. It's where we create life, right? It's like the void where we just get to, where creation is birthed from. And so when we create this, we're, so many of us are just so disconnected from this parts of our bodies. We're just like, oh, this is where we make babies and that's it. And that's so far from the truth, right? Like your womb is it's like its own entity, and you get to speak to it and you get to build this connection with her. And when we do this, we're getting deeper in touch with our creativity. We're the most connected to our bodies. We hold so much of our emotions in this center, right? This is like the sacral center, it's the sexual center, it's the center of creativity, of life. And so, yeah, and just creating that beautiful connection, asking her what she needs that day, right? Does she need more rest? Does she need more fluid movement? And so that's just one really big piece of it. um, and then we connect deeper to our intuition. I'm curious, actually, do you have a have you heard of this? Is this like something that you've ever incorporated into your practices, like connection to your womb?
Yes, I have tried it before because my really close friend Eliza, you might have heard of her, Eliza Caro, for anyone who listens, is a beautiful sex and relationship coach. And she has been doing this womb meditations where you connect to your womb and you listen to what she says and really like get in touch with this part of you. And also, I've been doing practices just connecting to different parts of me or even channeling them, even becoming, for example, my stomach or becoming my lungs or anything that I felt like there is kind of tension or emotional baggage stored somewhere. You can actually either connect to it to talk to it, or you can become this part of you and then see how you feel and see what you need. And maybe you need more movement, maybe you need to change your diet. And so I've been connecting with my body in these ways just because for the last maybe 1.5 year I've been on this massive healing journey of my digestive system. And I've done it only with emotional healing and herbs and cleanses and fasting and things like that, not any chemical meds or anything like that. And I feel great right now. And part of it was working with my sacral chakra, obviously, because the digestion affected my both solar plexus and sacral. And so feeling into all these different organs and talking to them and even channeling them sometimes was massive on my journey. And I feel like just working with the body in general, whether it's with organs or with movement, is kind of like a embodiment practice. Whatever it is, whichever organ you speak to is still kind of like going into the body, so embodying. In a way, I
Yes.
see it I see it that way. So yeah, and I had amazing results and realizations based on that, because oftentimes organs store specific even emotions or specific events even, or specific needs. And then when we explore it, it's like, oh my god, I didn't even know that, but it was all subconscious that now is bubbled up and coming to the surface to our
Mm.
conscious mind. And then we can really shift our life accordingly, because yeah, maybe your womb is going to tell you that you need to do some more breathing, or maybe you need to have more sex, or maybe you need to self pleasure more and actually connect to your sexuality and sensuality. And that's all beautiful. And that's also something that I would actually love to talk about: sensuality and intimacy, because I know that you work with these kind of topics as well. And first of all, what is your definition of intimacy?
Mm. I'm not sure if you've heard of like the term like into me I see, right? So
Yes.
intimacy, and it's so and so intimacy at a foundational level starts with you, right? Starts with us. How deeply we are connected to our own emotions, how deeply we can see our own selves through the eyes of compassion, through the eyes of love, how we're able to hold space for ourselves and to hold our own emotions. And so it's just how deeply connected are we to ourselves, to our hearts, and then that's reflected in the outer, right? So we can only meet people as deeply as we've met ourselves. Another cliche term, but oh so true and oh so profound, because we really can only meet people as deeply as we've gone within ourselves. Or else you just feel that blockage, right? You've been with people and you're like, this doesn't feel, I feel like I'm trying to get deeper and there's just that block. And I know that it's like, oh, that's just a reflection of where they might be turning away from themselves, something deeper to look at. So that's intimacy. And intimacy in partnership to me is trust and, um, um, yeah, how you are able to hold the other person in their emotions and accept them for who they are, and the ability to want to grow together um, and communicate. Intimacy, there is no intimacy if there is no healthy form of line of communication, right? And so that would be my definition of intimacy. Like, yeah.
Beautiful. I completely resonate with what you just said. And I feel like intimacy is, as you say, like knowing so much about yourself and your needs and your desires, that then you can authentically express to the other person, and then this person can take it and really take it in and then express back, and then create this beautiful bond and beautiful trust. But it needs to be based on your awareness of yourself first, because if you don't even know what your needs are and you don't even know what your desires are, how can you even express yourself authentically and openly to another person, right? It's just not gonna resonate, because you might be wearing masks, or you might be, sacrificing your own needs for someone else, and then it's just not working that way. But I know that it's for some people that maybe were traumatized in childhood, or just generally speaking, it might not be that easy for them to open up to another person. So how would you say people can create this trust in relationships, and really, maybe you can suggest a practice or just something that people can do to open themselves up more and more? Because I know a lot of people who are quite hidden, who are quite blocked from even connecting with friends, and not even speaking about their partner. So what is the first step or first three steps in your view, so that these people could open up and actually build this trust and build this connection and intimacy with others?
Yes, that's a beautiful question. I would say that the most important piece, well, number one, is creating a safe container, creating safety for the other person to feel safe enough to be able to express themselves and to put it all out on the table, and to be authentic in their expression. So creating a really safe container, and you can do that very, very consciously, right? You can decide how that looks for you, and bring you whatever you want to bring to your partner in a really healthy way, and say, hey, like, let's set up this time, being very intentional. Like, I want to set up this time in this space when you're open to it, to talk about something that's really important, XYZ, right? So creating a really safe container, and um, and then really just being very grounded in your and being grounded in however that looks for you, whatever practice that looks like for you, but being very grounded in your energy and in your presence, right? Being very, very, very present with your partner. You want your partner to know that you are there, that you're listening, and that you are listening through the heart and not just the ears, right? You're listening through the heart, and you're speaking from the heart,
Hmm.
so that you are showing your vulnerability, and the other which is a permission slip for the other person to be able to show their vulnerability. And it's um yeah, and so and building trust that way, right? Like, that's uh yeah, I think that's foundational.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially with what you said with the heart, because sometimes we can try to communicate to people when we are still triggered. So, for example, we try to communicate when we are angry, and we're like, oh, you did this and that. And, we shout and we're like, oh my God. But actually, this person is not going to receive us, because this is not what actually is triggering us. It's not our vulnerable self. It's not our heart that feels this way. This is our protector part that is like, I'm gonna protect my inner child from feeling like shit, right? But if we actually go into what is causing this anger, it's usually maybe powerlessness or fear or something deeper. And when we come and say, hey, I actually felt really powerless when you said that, or I was super scared that you're gonna, I don't know, leave me, or it was sad to me, it was hurtful what you said. Then if the other person can see our true self, our vulnerable self, this is where the connection and where the trust happens. Because if we are gonna be in this like war self in a way, or
Yeah.
protector self, it's just not gonna work. So if we can come to our heart and really see what is the feeling there that we are trying to communicate, and vulnerably really sharing what is the underlying feeling, not this part that is trying to just be at war, then we can really deeply connect. Because otherwise it's not gonna even like match our deepest needs, because we need to be seen for how we really feel deep inside, and usually it's just our inner traumatized child that has been there for 20, 30, 50 years, however many, however old are you. And then when you get there, the real shift can happen, because if the other person can be present with you once you're in your vulnerable self, this is where the trust is built. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And I really love what you said about really just like putting down your sword, right? Taking off the armor and coming from the place you described, speaking through the heart so perfectly, right? Like, rather than speaking from emotional, like a trigger, right? Being able to identify that in yourself and in your partner, and being like, oh, I just meeting the other person and meeting yourself with more curiosity rather than fire and blame, or it's like this, like taking full accountability for our emotions, and really just being wanting to understand our partners better, right? And wanting to understand what the underlying emotion is to whatever is was coming up, because it's almost never what it seems like on the surface, right? Like that, like it's like, oh, you didn't take the garbage out again, and it's like, okay, well, what's the underlying what's the underlying um issue here? Like, what's the underlying emotion? And then being able to communicate that from like this, there are tools like nonviolent communication, right, where you get to actually um, speak from a place of taking full accountability, and uh, by not blaming the other person for how you're feeling, saying, hey, this thing was said and this is how I feel, and then making a request, right? And sometimes I think that on the topic of nonviolent communication, it can be rigid. People kind of like take it book by book, and it kind of interrupts the flow of communication. Where you're like, okay, and it's like rather than um, speaking from more of like a human place, right? And
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, I think that you just said that so beautifully, and just really coming from a grounded place where we're speaking from through the heart, through vulnerability, and not our triggers and shadows. Yeah, I
Mm.
love that. I love
Thank
that you said
you.
that.
Thank you. And can you just tell to maybe all the listeners who have never heard of the nonviolent communication, just quickly, what is the step by step process for that?
Yes. Um, so nonviolent communication is just, it's a tool, right? It's not like you have to use it, go by the book and use it every single time, but it is a really good tool to have in the toolbox when something is um, feels very heated or very very heavy, and you have the urge to kind of come at something with like a trigger, or this is just something that's really important, so you get to use that discernment. um, but nonviolent communication is really just a way to, like I said, take accountability for how we're feeling, and while also and being vulnerable, to evoke compassion from the other person, because it's much easier to meet somebody with receptivity and an open mind, and to receive through the heart when we're going about it that way, right? When we're speaking uh, vulnerably. So there's a book called Nonviolent Communication, and it's written so perfectly. So I suggest that if you are in a relationship and you have not read it, read it. And it's good stuff. Um, and so yeah, nonviolent communication is first identifying within yourself where this is coming from, right? Like taking the time to sit with yourself and really, maybe you can journal, but really just identifying what it is that you're feeling, and what's the feeling underneath that? What's the feeling underneath what's the feeling underneath that? And then bringing it to your partner in a safe container. For example, you could say somebody raised their voice and they yelled at you, your partner yelled at you, and you felt scared, right? Or yeah, so you would say, um, to be very specific about you can't be like, so every time you do this, right, or every time you've yelled at me, or you always yell at me. It's like really compacting, being very specific about the time, the situation, the experience that was triggering, right? So the other day when you raised your voice and you said that thing, you said that thing to me, you raised your voice, I felt, not you made me feel, I felt very unsafe, or I felt unheard. And it reminded me of a time in childhood when my dad did this, raised his voice at me. I felt unsafe, and I felt really hurt. And then really just expressing your vulnerability in that, expressing your emotions, and then you can make a request. saying, and so I would prefer uh, if we spoke in a way with each other that where we didn't raise our voices, because that I would feel really really safe, and I would feel um, really heard in that. Yeah.
Hmm. That's
And then
beautiful.
yeah, yeah. And that's and you right, and you now you've given your partner an opportunity to see you through the eyes of compassion, and um to not feel attacked, right?
Hmm. Yeah, because that's the point of nonviolent communication, that people don't feel like you're blaming them. Like it's them, they caused you to feel like this. It's like, no, I take ownership. This is what I am feeling. These are my emotions, and I am responsible and accountable for them. And you are responsible and accountable for something that you feel. And I feel like it's such an important topic to talk about because, even I spoke to my friend today and he was like, yeah, when my girlfriend does this, she said this thing to me. I'm like, look, this has nothing to do with you, what she said to you. Like, it's probably with her dad or with her teacher at school. It has nothing to do with you because everyone is just projecting their own stuff onto each other. And sometimes, you know, people just say things to make us feel exactly the way they feel. So, if I had a situation with someone where I said, hey, look, I thought that this is what you did. I asked you not to do it and you did it. And this person instantly was like, trying to make me feel guilty that I screwed up their day with saying this. And I'm like, look, I'm not going to feel guilty because I didn't do anything wrong. But it was good to see that this person was just trying to make me feel how they felt. But I knew that this is what people do. So I didn't take it personally. I didn't take it in. I was like, look, I understand that this is how you feel, but it's not mine to hold. I don't feel guilty. It's not my emotion. And then when they realize it, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I felt really stupid that I did that. And then, they could come to the conscious realization that, okay, it's actually mine to hold. And I think it's so important to share this because sometimes we take so many things personally, but actually nothing is personal. Like literally no feeling or no thought is personal because even if my partner triggers something in me, it's still my childhood trauma that gets triggered if I feel emotional about it. Because if I was a little baby, I wouldn't be triggered by it. So that means that at some point in my life, there was a trauma that made me feel this specific reaction to this specific behavior, right? So I feel like this topic of taking ownership and taking responsibility for your own emotions and actions and everything really is so powerful because then we can really feel stronger, even in our solar plexus chakra, where we feel like we create our life, where we feel like we choose how we react, when we feel like it's our responsibility to create our life the way we want it, to feel the feelings that we have there, to see the thoughts that we have, and to really take ownership. And that's why I also have heard that in nonviolent communication, you try to use the words that are really not connected to the other person. So, yeah, like instead of, I don't know how I don't know if I know the example, but like instead of saying, for example, I feel unseen, then maybe to go even deeper into the layer of like, how does, the feeling unseen make you feel even deeper? Maybe you would feel like alone. And then or lonely or whatever else there is, because the less you can project onto the other person with framing it in the way that the less it is kind of like linked to them, it is the
Yeah,
better for you, because then they can be more and more compassionate. They can feel like, okay, it has nothing to do with me. She is just hurt or she is just sad and she is just feeling like this. And I'm here wanting to help her not feel like that. So, as you said, it brings us
yeah.
to this more compassionate space where we are like, oh, you're feeling sad. Let me hug you, or let me do something that is actually, gonna make you feel more loved. And then we're like, oh, at least that's what I
Oh,
that's what I found.
yes, yes. So true, so true. The trying to take as much accountability without actually projecting anything onto the other person, right? Like that you said that so perfectly, where it's like, okay, if you unheard, okay, or unsafe, fearful, or alone, right? And because the other person can be like, well, I felt like I was hearing you, but now I'm not. Now I'm feeling confused, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, the defenses start to go up because we're like, okay, well, that wasn't my intention, right? So I think that you really thank you for adding that part in. And then also when I just was thinking of this as well, like when we're making that request for a change in behavior, or to receive something, to ask for something, um, making sure that it is a request and not a demand. We can have
Mm-hmm.
non-negotiables. We can have non-negotiables, and that can be also communicated. But also, like, we know when we're like, when it's a request or a demand, because being like, okay, well, and how does that feel for you, right? Like, is that something that is that a request that you're able to meet? And then really just keeping that open for the other person to decide if that is a request that they're able to meet, or just getting to know their thoughts around that. And I think that that's really important too, because oftentimes we're like, oh, I have this request, but then they don't have the capacity, or they're not able to meet it, or they don't want to meet it, or whatever it is, and then we get really, really upset and really angry. So just kind of being
Mm-hmm.
aware of that. And
Yeah,
yeah,
being
I think that
detached
was
from the outcome,
the
right?
outcome.
Being
Yeah,
detached
yeah.
from what's gonna happen. It's like I request this, but it's kind of like with manifestation. If you want to manifest something, it's like, universe, I request this, but then just let it go and let it be, and let the universe bring you this thing into your life, rather than being like, oh, come on, universe, I told you that I want this.
Oh,
And
it's
now
just,
you
I
have
hear
to give
that.
it to me.
I demand it. I want it now. I want it, and I want it now, and I deserve it, and it should be here. And why is it not here? And it's funny that we do that, because it actually pulls us so much further away from actually getting that thing that we want. And that's where like surrender and trust comes in, like really trusting and just surrendering.
Absolutely.
Which, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And this actually reminds me of the session I had with my friend who is a clairvoyant. And I asked him, what is my mission here on earth? Like, what am I supposed to do? What's my genius zone? Or, things like that. And he said that he saw two visions. One was Cleopatra, maybe in English, Cleopatra in Polish. And then the other one was Mother Teresa. And then he was like, okay, but what does it mean? And then he said, okay, you're going to be like Cleopatra, which is super successful, super abundant, princess, like amazing life, everything that you've ever wanted, you will have. But in order to get there, you need to become like Mother Teresa, who doesn't want anything at all. And she's just serving the world without wanting anything. So the road to become like Cleopatra is to become like Mother Teresa. So in order to have everything, you need to want nothing. And I just thought about it when you were sharing this, because really it's when we let go, when we allow the universe to work in all these magical ways. Of course we can have goals, of course we can have preferences, but the more we are just allowing, the easier for the things to flow into our life that we want, right? So yeah,
Mm.
just wanted to share this thing, because I think it might be helpful for some people who listen, to just really look into yourself and really check with yourself, like, am I like really attached to it? Am I really feeling like if I don't get this, then I'm not going to be happy, or something is going to go wrong, or whatever? And really, yeah, bring consciousness to it. Because after the session I was like, wow, I actually was attached to some of the things in my life. I was trying to make things in specific way rather than just letting it be. So it was just really profound for me,
Mm.
so I just wanted to share that briefly with you.
Yes.
And
Yeah. No, that's perfect.
I would love
Yeah.
to come
That
back
was just.
to. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I
no,
think we
no,
have a
no.
little bit of
You
a
do.
lag.
Actually, yeah, your camera went off for a minute, but then it came back. So, yeah,
Yeah,
if you want
I
to move
think
on
it's
to the next thing, I was.
it's Mercury retrograde. I say it
I
all the
feel like it's
time
always.
for the last like 2 weeks. I say it almost on every podcast, because almost every time I have technical issues or something, and or lags or whatever. It's Mercury. It's Mercury. Maybe we can ask Mercury for a moment to just not shine its energy on us for just a little bit until the end of this podcast. Because yeah, thank you,
Please.
Mercury, for not doing it. And yeah. So I would love to come back to the topic of relationships, because I actually haven't really spoken about relationships on this podcast yet that much. And I feel like it's so crucial to look into this, because this is how we learn, and this is how we can see the mirror, the mirror of ourselves. And so sometimes we have situations in our life, in relationships, where we have a conflict, and then both parts are triggered. And then, in this situation, how do you resolve this if both parts are already in the trauma, in the trigger, in the emotions, and they, it's clear that they are not gonna like go further, or that it's like the energy is so tense that, it's just too much. So what would you say people should do in this kind of situation?
Hmm. It's a good question. I think a lot of so many of us experience that, right? It's such a common thing that comes up in a relationship. And my advice, and this is just through personal experience, when something is that heated, when the moment is that heated and it's that intense, and you know that you're both not getting to a place of resolve, or you're even able to approach a place of resolve, or start working your way towards that, is just to like take some space for a minute, walk away, right? And
Hmm.
just taking some space to really just give that moment, just give that place a moment to breathe, give it some space, and and do what both of you need to do to ground yourselves. And maybe that looks like taking some deep breaths, really centering, grounding the body, and or it can mean like punching the shit out of a pillow and getting your anger out that way, right? Because your anger is not something that you want to shame or suppress or stuff away or project to your part at your partner, but rather find a healthy outlet for that. And that's clean anger, right? So finding a clean anger for our outlet for our anger, if that's the emotion that's present. So maybe go punch the shit out of your pillow, scream into your pillow, put on some crazy music, and just let it out. And journal, right? Like get your thoughts, get sorting out your thoughts through journaling is a really, really powerful practice as well. But yeah, and there are a lot of different tools to use, but just to really ground yourself and to sort out your emotions. And maybe it's meditating. I don't whatever your body really needs to really feel clearer and more grounded, so that you can come back to your partner and really, and then at the end of all of that, connecting back to the heart. No matter what you do, if it's an anger release, or um, or you're meditating, whatever it is, you're sorting through your emotions, really just like in the end coming back to the heart. And I love the practice of just putting your hand on your heart and thinking of, and for me it's like thinking of all the beautiful things about your partner, right? So just like really coming back to that place of love, and okay, what's the greater goal here? I value, reminding ourselves that like I value this relationship, I value this person, I respect this person, I view this relationship with sacredness and reverence, and it really matters that we come from a place of love, really just coming back to love, always coming back to love, and do it until it feels good. And then when you're both ready, coming back together and trying to come to a place of resolve, and doing that through love.
That's so beautiful. I love the doing that through love part, because everything is love, really, if we think about it, or if we feel into it, actually. And I love this,
Mm-hmm.
what you just said, that space is actually what can bring healing. And I oftentimes, when I had fights with my ex partner, Ricky, that you've met, I oftentimes would go to the forest and I would imagine that one tree is him, and I would just, scream the shit out of my myself and my throat and my lungs and everything, and I would just hate on this tree so much. Then I felt sorry for this tree to have to take on so many emotions of mine, but I would just really express it out of the relationship, so that then I can really feel at peace, so that this whole energy that was bubbling up in me is expressed outside of the relationship. And that's so crucial, I feel. So thank you for sharing this, because I feel like sometimes, especially in this community of healers and coaches, sometimes in relationship we can become like psychotherapists to each other, or like coaches to each other, and we are resolving a lot of traumas in the relationship, whereas in reality sometimes it can be so much. It happened to me and Ricky before. Sometimes it can be so much that we become more like psychotherapists to each other rather than actually romantic relationship, because it takes away some of these vibes. If you work through a trauma every single day for like a week with each other, then it can take away from this like romantic and loving and like, or maybe even sexual vibe, because you are spending so much time just healing and going through shit. And that's beautiful as well. I think it's important to have this in relationship, because this is the person that you spend them, probably most of your life with. And so it's beautiful and it's crucial. But if you don't have this other outlet, or outlets, actually, I would say, even plural. You need to have a lot of outlets outside of the relationship, because if the situation gets so fiery, let's say, in the relationship, you need to have at least a few friends that you can call and express yourself to get it
Mm.
out outside of the relationship, all these emotions, and then come as more whole beings, more peaceful beings, and grounded, as you said, and loving, come together. And would you agree that, some people that are coaches and healers could have this dynamic that sometimes it's like too much healing within the relationship?
Yes, yes, very much so. Um, which is something that I hadn't really experienced until my last relationship with Ryan, who you also know. And he's so smart, and he intellectualizes so much of his emotion, and so it's just and he's been in the coaching space for such a long time, and I'm also a coach, and we both have this awareness. But yes, sometimes it can get to the point where it's like, okay, there's a lot of clearing here, and it kind of interrupts the flow. It can interrupt the flow of
Hmm.
fun and relationship and ease, right? Because you want a relationship to feel easeful. That doesn't mean that you never go through shit. That doesn't mean that your partner's not allowed to have feelings or not allowed to feel shitty sometimes, right? You want to be there for your partner. But there is a balance of, where can I hold myself? Where can I find other outlets to not always bring this to the relationship? Because you want to heal and grow together, but there is balance that I think is healthy for a relationship. And sometimes that looks like going to, hiring a therapist, hiring a relationship coach, right, if there's no resolve, or hiring your own coach to kind of like be to have another outlet, to sort yourself out, or to bring some outside perspective, or whatever it is. And so there is balance, and then there's sometimes it's just like, how can I better learn to just sit in the emotion? And that's where like true embodiment, I think, comes from, is when you are able to just like not to just like hold yourself in the emotion, to witness yourself, to not need anyone else to witness you in that moment but yourself, right?
Hmm.
Because a lot of times we tend to go to other people to process things, rather than just sitting with the discomfort of whatever's coming up, and training the brain, training your body to witness the emotion with more equanimity, right? And to just like, with more of like a lightheartedness. Because if we're always just like, oh, I have these traumas, I'm triggered, then you're like living in the trauma, and you're never actually taking yourself out of the darkness and into the light. And then and when you don't do that, it kind of bleeds into the relationship, and it's a lot to ask uh, of your other partner to hold all of that for you, or with you, right? So
Yeah.
that's my take on that. Um, and we're all just learning. We're all just trying to, figure it out. And but it's really, really good. A lot of times we have these blind spots, I think, where we just don't see it, because, uh, you know, ego will sort of just like make its appearance, and it tries to keep us safe, right? We tend to like demonize the ego, but it's actually there to keep us safe, right? I know that you know that, from not feeling a certain way. And so we can tend to, in relationship, try to control the other person through more covert forms of manipulation, to manipulate their behavior so that it's not triggering for you. And this is where it comes back to taking accountability for your own triggers, and being like, okay, this is mine, and being able to witness that, with more compassion, um, and listening, like, oh, that's a blind spot, okay, and just being
Hmm.
really, really open to that, and releasing the control, rather than trying to control your partner into being somebody different, especially if the triggers are not like, um, it's not like like a really aggressiveness, or like really bullying your partner or anything like that. But if it's things that, like, oh, that's mine, taking full accountability and wanting to work on that, and that's for both partners. So
Yeah.
that's my
I
take.
couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more with what you just said. But about the ego, I actually love my ego. I freaking love it. I feel like I just got so aware of myself, and of course I still probably have a lot to be aware of, but already I have enough awareness of myself and my ego that I can use it for my benefit. Like, for example, my ego loves to talk to people. Okay, so I'm going to be a good podcaster maybe because I love talking to people, and my ego likes this or that, then I'm okay, maybe I'm going to choose this path because I'm already aligned and my potential is there to be in this way or to be in that way. And you can actually use your patterns, right? And if you use them consciously, it's actually not a subconscious program that is just running on the back of your mind. It's actually a conscious choice. Like, okay, I'm outgoing, so let's use it. Let's run some events. Let's, do something about it. So I feel like I freaking
Yeah.
love my ego, and I encourage everyone to love this part of themselves because it's gonna be there anyway. So you might as well love it, right?
I mean, it's what makes you human. If you didn't have ego, you would be nothingness. You would have no human identity. I mean, it's part of the human experience, and it gives us a personality, right? That gives you your unique personality and your traits, for better or for better or for worse, whether you like it or not. And yes, like you said, like you get to ego with awareness. That's where we have like a healthier ego, right? Like that's the ego that we get to let, we're like, oh, okay. And when we have that, then we can look at the shadow part of our ego and still not demonize it, but just say, oh, okay, that's just something that we get to tweak, or for the betterment of myself and my relationships and other, for the betterment of other people too. So yeah, we your ego's good. Your ego's good. It serves its purpose. It really serves its purpose. Yeah, but with awareness, that's
Yeah.
what we want, right? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So I would like to, for a moment, just come back to what you just said about outsider perspective and also sitting with yourself, because I feel like you need to have a lot of discernment and listen to your intuition with what you need, whether you need to resolve something and sit by yourself and really just feel into it and be with it, or whether you need some external perspective. Because I found that sometimes, because me and Ricky, we were able to heal each other and ourselves, sometimes we were actually missing this objective perspective. And I remember one time when we, for a week, we couldn't kind of like get to alignment. We couldn't integrate our perspective. For a week, we were like trying to heal and communicate and whatever. And then at like maybe 3 a.m. our time, we called Ryan. And it took him 2 hours to get us from super triggered to super in love, because we needed this outer perspective, because we couldn't see, as you said, some blind spots in our relating experience, that Ryan just jumped in and he was like, yep, okay, do this, do this, do this, and he was just guiding us through it. And we were like, oh my god, in 2 hours he completely shifted our whole experience. And it was nothing more really than making us feel what we feel inside. And probably me, you, and every other coach also does these practices, but the fact that it was an outside perspective, an objective perspective, not based on our projections and what we created in this relating experience, was so helpful. So I feel like sometimes people might have this idea, oh, what for a relationship coach? Like, we don't have problems. We're not going to go for relationship coaching. We don't need that. But actually, I feel like everyone freaking needs it. Like every relationship, if they had a relationship coach, they would be a better relationship, period. Like, even if it's only once a month or once per 3 months, or because the relationship coach is there for a reason. It can bring you more perspective on some things, and it's an objective perspective. And of course you can fulfill this with your friends, but I feel like if you really struggle, if you're listening to it and really struggle in your relationship, really consider a relationship coach, because sometimes this outer perspective can completely shift your understanding or your perspective on what's going on. So would you agree with that, that sometimes it's like necessary to have a coach to tell you,
Oh
hey
my
guys,
god.
okay.
Time out. Time out. Boys and girls, sit down. Let's have a chat. Yeah, 1,000%. Of course, I think that even if you go into a relationship, and I know people who hire coaches, like a relationship coach, before a problem even starts, because a lot of times therapists will say they come to me when it's already too late. There's too much damage, right? So you want to get it. It's beautiful. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing bad that could come of having an outside perspective, a professional, somebody with an unbiased opinion who gets to help you just better communicate and to learn each other better, and to just have that outside perspective, I think is incredibly helpful. And it's good to hire a coach when you're single. It's good to hire a coach before the problem starts, when you first start a relationship. It's good to hire a coach when the things do come up and you notice that it's not that you're not that you're just having, you can learn more. You can learn more, and you're curious, and you value the relationship enough to want to make it work in the best way possible. So my advice is don't wait till it gets too bad to hire a coach. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
There's
but
always a good
incredible.
time to hire a coach.
Yeah. Honestly, yes, yes, and I think that's the biggest piece is just getting support when you know that you need it, and not having the shame in that. And I love that we're in this time, this day and age, where this is becoming more a widely accepted thing. It's an encouraged thing. Like getting, it's not like you're just getting help because you suck at relationships, or you're not, you don't know how to be happy, or you're just like not good at life. It's like, no, this is just where I believe that humans are on this planet. We're here to help one another. I think that's our main purpose, and that doesn't mean it has to be your job, but to help other people, because we're all coming from a different place. We're all coming with different perspectives, and we all have different ways to help each other. And so I think that's just a really, really beautiful part of the human experience.
Yes, yes, I agree with that completely. I feel like since I started doing the job that I do, I feel so much more fulfilled because the reward that you're getting with the people like complimenting you or saying, "Oh my God, this session changed my life" or whatever, are just not. It's just non-comparable to anything. It's non-comparable to the price that you get. The money that you get for the session. It's just energy. It's just the thing that you get like energetically, that is the biggest reward. So I totally agree with you. And so what would you say from your perspective are maybe top 3 tips for the most healthy relationship, maybe apart from hiring a coach, because that's what we covered already. But what else would you say that is really crucial to build this beautiful healthy relationship dynamic?
Mm. I would say, and I think I've sort of mentioned this already, but building the connection with yourself and really nurturing and fostering that connection to self. Number one, it all
Mm-hmm.
starts with you, right? Um, and having a very communicating your needs and your desires in a way that's really healthy. So being very clear on what your needs are, what your values are, what you desire in a relationship, and asking that from your partner, and learning, and yeah, and learning how to do that in a way um, that's healthy, right? Not like a passive aggressive, or they should know I'm going to tiptoe around the vulnerability and the courage that it takes to express these things. So I'm just going to assume that they know what I want and what I need, right? And then when that need is not being met, we start to rebel in different ways, or we start to shut down, right? And so there's that, and then and just having and just keeping the heart open, and always coming back uh, to love, and um, there's this and empathy and compassion, and that healthy communication. I think those are just like the foundational, and when I talk about expressing your needs and your boundaries, right? Like that's a big one in relationship too, like expressing your needs, expressing your boundaries, and um really just like having, there's just like no bounds. There's nothing that you can't talk about, right? I think that we have so much, we carry this there's a lot of shame that's carried around our sexuality, and in communicating what our desires and what our needs are in sexuality. And so um so that's a really big piece that I think you know uh having like a really healthy sex life, and learning how to uh having a really healthy sex life. And now I'm like just naming all of the things. And really, actually, another big piece that I talk about is understanding polarity dynamics, like really understanding how we operate, right, in our masculine and our feminine energies, which has nothing to do with male and female, right? It's just they're just principles, right? Energetic principles. So learning how to be more receptive and compassionate um, and nurturing and how to release control and then and trusting, right? And then there's like the masculine where we the masculine energy where we're able to hold space for one another uh and not trying to fix the other person, right? And so just yeah, like learning the dynamics of polarity, inner polarity and outer polarity, right? So there are different practices to like nurture your feminine or to balance, to really just come into balance within with your inner masculine and inner feminine, and then having that expressed healthily in the relationship. And there's always just this dance of like, okay, letting a man lead, knowing when to like let someone lead you, and when to be more receptive. And I think that's a really big piece. A lot of times we try to like control or fix our partners, and it's just like learning when to just let go and let a man lead, or uh, allow a woman to be in her emotions and being the container for that, like the safe, steady pillar, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to just stick to three, but yeah, that's beautiful things, all
That was
important.
amazing. That was freaking amazing. I loved all that you just said. And all of these pillars, let's say, are so crucial to a healthy, beautiful, loving relationship. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I have one little question at the end for you. And I'm sure you might be asked this question, or maybe even by me before, but I would really love the listeners to know, because you're the first, and maybe only, I don't know, the first twin that I have on my podcast. And I wanted to ask you about, maybe because some of the people who listen might also have twins. How did you find your uniqueness? And also, did you have to even heal some traumas when it comes to identity and uniqueness and being your own self? In the dynamic, that you're born and you have no choice, but there is another person who is very similar to you. So, how did you navigate on this healing journey of finding your own self and your own uniqueness, being a twin? Because I feel like for some people it might be quite challenging to do this, or to it might bring some stuff up. So how did you navigate it?
That's really, really like really funny that you asked that question, because that's actually something that we've worked a lot on that, and we've healed that just through our experiences being on our own, having separation, not living together, and her being on a very different journey with her relationship, and me being on my very authentic journey myself, and navigating my dating life. Um, and it's just funny that you mentioned that, because we still come up against that. To be very truthful, we still do come up against this, like, well, I posted this thing that feel that like creating this identity as a coach, and showing up authentically, and then sometimes, and we share a lot of the same community, so like our audience can sometimes be is very similar. And so it'll be like, well, I posted something, and and that feels a little too close to what I posted, and so it's just like there's this thing that happens, and it's like, well, we're twins, so of course it's going to happen. And I'm like, well, you try a different thing, and we really do still come up against that. But I think what naturally has evolved over time and has differentiated us um, in our personalities and our uniqueness is really just being on the personal growth journey alone, and being separated. I moved to Austin um, 4 years ago, 4 years ago. And that was the first time I'd ever separated from my sister. It was really hard, but I was like, I think I just need to, little birdie needs to spread her wings. And I flew to Austin, and I moved out here on my own. And I think that's where that was where the spark of that healing, that evolution began. And as I began to be more comfortable in my own self, and just discovering more of my own creativity, and um, through connecting to my womb, and through dance, and through finding different modalities like painting, And that's just where I really and really just like finding our own confidence to be able to express ourselves authentically. And that's where we kind of just, you learn not to just mirror off of the other person. You're in your own lane, and we're uh finding different outlets on our own. But it takes a little bit of like that separation, and I think that's where that really started. And just really getting to know ourselves on a deeper level. And we've both been on that journey, and that just, everything unfolds from there. Everything evolves from there. Everything, your authenticity, your expression, and just how we show up in the world. So it's
Wow.
just really interesting that you asked that question, because it came up last week and it was like it was a thing. So but truthfully it still happens. And I think sometimes that's just ego that comes up. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, what's the underlying thing there? Is there a scarcity mindset? Like, oh, I need to, like there's not enough of an audience, or that's mine. Like, that's mine, right? Like, yeah, that's mine. Don't copy me. Like, like, but what's the real point? What's the real point? What's the real point? Like, um, and yeah, and just like I dress differently than she does a little bit. Like, I definitely have more of like the pop color. She's more neutral colors, and that just happened through our own evolution. It's the best way I can explain it, is just like one day I was like, you know what, I'm gonna throw on some purple eyeliner because fuck it, like that feels good for me. And and I've always been a little more spunky than she is, and so now I'm just like owning that shit and showing up that way. And she's more stoic and neutral colors, and she's showing up that way, and that's just how it goes. So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I feel like it's even important in a regular relationship, let's say, sometimes to take some space from each other and to discover who you really are. So I guess for twins, it's an even more crucial thing to take this space and to be with yourself and to see where you're at, what are your needs, your desires. Because if you're so interconnected with someone, whether it's your sibling or your partner, you might actually take on their needs and their thoughts and their outlooks on life without even knowing, because it's all subconscious, right? So we don't know until we center ourselves in ourselves and we are completely by like on our own. And I really love this kind of feeling, because I remember when I went to Australia, I went by myself. I had no friends there, I had no job, I had nothing. I just started there fresh, and it was one of the most freeing feelings ever, because was having any no one did like have any idea about me and any judgments and any assessments. I could create myself from scratch for who I wanted to be and how I wanted to, you know, be in the world and how I wanted to express myself. So it was so freeing for me to do this. And I highly recommend this to anyone who is brave enough to do this stuff, because it's really freeing when you have nothing and no one and you rebuild your life from scratch. And it's so exciting and so freeing to do this. So I totally vibe with what you just said, about discovering yourself by yourself and just being brave and just going somewhere and being more aligned with your own soul and your own path. Yeah.
Yeah, being brave. And I love that for you, that you went to a new space and you didn't know anyone. It's literally just like your canvas is clean, and then you get to paint and you get to throw different colors and be like, I actually don't like that color, and you get to do whatever comes through for you on your, as you begin to like discover more of yourself. And that's just so much fun.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, like
Highly
that.
recommended, people. Highly recommended.
Highly recommend. And it's just a journey, and it changes, and you get to like try it on, and if you don't like it, you get to take it off. Like I'll put this hat on, and you know and that was a big thing with my sister and I. It's just like I would do something, because you were right, it's like it's an unconscious thing where I'll put something on that she's wearing, and I'm like, now that I'm more in tune with myself, I'm like, actually that doesn't really resonate as much. I'm gonna take that off, and I'm gonna do
Hmm.
my own thing.
Hmm.
So yes, I love that.
Yeah, that's so spot on how you just frame it. It's kind of like a belief. Like, am I believing this? I'm gonna take on this hat. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. I'm gonna put this perspective on. Oh, maybe not. Like, try different perspectives, try different beliefs, and then see what fits you. Because it's, with clothes is the same as with mindset, right? You can see like,
Yeah,
oh, that resonates, that doesn't, and you can just try different things on. Beautiful. So
yeah,
thank you for saying
yes.
that. And we're running a little bit out of time. I would love to chat to you more because we have such a great convo, but we're gonna end it here. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much, beautiful sister, for coming on the podcast with me today. It was so amazing, and I was just so excited. And yeah, I'm still excited to chat to you more, maybe in the future, because I feel like we still have a lot of things to talk about.
Always, there's always so much more to talk about, but it's been such a pleasure talking to you, and I just love being in your energy and your just your juiciness, like your vibrancy. It's beautiful and it's contagious. And so thank you so much for having me on here. This was so much fun. This was so much fun. Oh, I would love to come. I want to come back. I want to come
Awesome.
back.
Yeah, let's see each other again. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Sending you so much love.
Mwah.
Thank you so much, beautiful souls, for being with us today. Just wanted to mention that you can find Nicolette on Instagram. It's NicoleTTEMG. So if you'd like to check her out, go to her Instagram. And if you'd like to check me out, I am The Connection Catalyst. So literally, if you type The Connection Catalyst on Instagram, you're going to find me too. Or you can go to www.connection-catalyst.com. So thank you, beautiful souls. Hope that you're going to stay tuned and looking forward to being with you the next time.